Everything began with a small object Elodie had inherited from her late mother. One day, by pure accident, she dropped and broke it. The moment it shattered, a flood of memories rushed over her like a massive tidal wave, overwhelming her senses completely. A voice she could never forget echoed endlessly inside her mind, calling out her name again and again. Suddenly, the world around her shifted and blurred, and when clarity returned, a woman stood before her, looking at her with clear concern and fear, asking if the young lady was unhurt. Elodie slowly rose to her feet, trying to steady herself as she took in her surroundings. The kind woman offered her a hand and further assistance, but Elodie politely declined, assuring her that she was perfectly fine and needed no help. Yet, as she glanced toward a nearby shop window, she froze. Her reflection looked different, altered in a way she could not immediately explain. Just as confusion threatened to pull her back into the swirling chaos of thoughts, she was brought back to the present moment by the sound of maids calling out to her, their voices filled with panic and frantic apologies for some mistake they had made. The realization struck her hard. The memories that had flooded her mind were not dreams or fantasies, but the lived experiences of Elodie's past life. Now, everything began to make sense. She was living as the illegitimate daughter of the noble House Perdia, the only recognized daughter of the Duke. Until that very moment, she had only held memories of her current life, but breaking that precious heirloom had unlocked the entirety of her previous existence. In truth, Elodie was originally just a character in a story, and she had somehow ended up inhabiting this body, living out the events written within those pages. The true danger lay in knowing what came next. Throughout the progression of the story, the original Elodie committed terrible, cruel acts that eventually led to her tragic and early death. She was, by design, the true villain of the tale. Now the memories of her past life were mixed with the knowledge of what the real Elodie had done, yet she could not understand why these memories returned only now, after she had already behaved so poorly for such a long time. If she continued to follow the path laid out in the original narrative, death was inevitable. Refusing to accept such a fate, she decided to carefully examine every detail she had recalled. She soon realized that her character's downfall was not solely caused by her own wickedness, but there was a far greater threat looming over her, her own father, Duke Sylvester Perdia, who was arguably the greatest villain in the entire world. At the moment of Elodie's death in the story, the Duke had not lifted a single finger to save her or even to delay her fate. The reason for his cold indifference was simple: the existence of Estelle, the true protagonist of the story. He had adopted Estelle initially as a political move to strengthen his influence, but over time, Estelle had captivated everyone in the household with her extraordinary beauty and charm, becoming the favored child. Before Estelle arrived, Elodie had been engaged to the first prince. However, due to her growing bad reputation and the scandals that followed her, the engagement was eventually broken. To secure his power and maintain a close connection to the royal line through the first prince, Duke Ferdia adopted Estelle and immediately arranged for her to take Elodie's place as the prince's fiancée. Understanding her position perfectly, Elodie knew she had only one goal: to leave the Perdia estate as quickly as possible. Yet a sudden, unexplained disappearance or escape would only raise suspicion and bring unwanted attention. Therefore, she made a firm plan. Before Estelle appeared on the scene and changed the family dynamic forever, Elodie would leave the house of her own accord and gain complete independence from her family. Gaining permission or approval for such a thing would be incredibly difficult, but she resolved to try every possible method within her power. The first step was to sever her ties with the first prince, a handsome young man with ash-colored hair and striking green eyes. She composed a formal letter to him, requesting that they officially annul their engagement, and included all necessary legal documents for him to sign. When His Highness received the letter, he was initially confused. He had assumed that Lady Elodie wished to arrange a meeting, perhaps related to the upcoming celebration in honor of the Emperor's birthday, an event she had previously mentioned. His eyes widened in genuine surprise as he read the actual content, where she calmly asked him to sign the attached papers and end their commitment. He could not understand what kind of game she was playing or what had prompted such a sudden change. Not long after, Elodie was summoned to her father's private office. She entered calmly, knowing this meeting was likely related to her recent actions. Duke Sylvester Perdia began the conversation by stating plainly that she had made serious mistakes. Elodie wondered silently why a man who had always been indifferent to her antics and behavior would suddenly call her in to reprimand her. She suspected it might be connected to the harsh punishments she had inflicted on servants in the past, or perhaps the chaos she had caused at the last social gathering they attended. Sylvester Perdia looked at his daughter and demanded she explain herself. To his utter shock, Elodie lowered her head and asked for his forgiveness. She admitted she had been wrong in her past actions and promised sincerely that she would never repeat those mistakes again. Bewildered by this sudden change in attitude, the Duke moved on to the main reason for the summons. The first prince had contacted him directly to inform him that Elodie had sent a letter requesting the annulment of their engagement. The Duke remained stiff and serious as Elodie confirmed that there was no mistake, and that the letter was indeed sent by her own will. Sylvester then asked if she was ending the engagement because it was never something she truly wanted. Elodie had always believed her father disliked the union as much as the prince did, so she thought the matter held little importance to him. She had never imagined the circumstances would shift so drastically, or that the prince would speak to her father first. Despite her reasoning, Sylvester firmly forbade the annulment and told her she needed time to reflect deeply on her actions and her place in the family. He did not dismiss her immediately, so she asked if there was anything else he wished to say or instruct her to do. He simply shook his head and ordered her to return to her quarters and meditate on her behavior. Elodie left the office immediately, her heart pounding. It had been a terrifying encounter, but she was relieved to have avoided any severe punishment or sanction. To some degree, she had anticipated this outcome, and she walked back toward her wing of the estate, analyzing what had happened. It was clear that the Duke's actions were driven by his desire to maintain a strong alliance with the first prince. She calculated that she had roughly 3 years before the major events of the story took place, and within that time, she would definitely find a way to break free from her family completely. While she planned her escape, she recalled the ancient history of the continent. Long ago there existed 7 deadly sins that brought ruin and destruction to the land. The goddess of the underworld, Urkala, had a deep longing to possess both heaven and earth, and so the 7 sins set out to destroy the entire continent for her. Just as the world was on the brink of total annihilation, the younger sister of Urkala and the goddess of heaven and earth stepped forward to intervene. She bestowed a portion of her divine power upon 7 chosen individuals who managed to seal away the 7 deadly sins that had plagued the world. These victors were honored as heroes, and eventually they established 7 noble families that became the pillars of the kingdom of Valencia. In the present day, only 5 of these great houses remained, including the imperial family, and among them was the House of Perdia, which possessed the terrifying power of destruction. Lost in these thoughts, Elodie suddenly felt a chill run down her spine as a voice greeted her. It was her older brother Yancey Perdia, who remarked that it had been quite a long time since they had seen each other. She had suspected she would run into her brothers in the main building, but she did not expect it to happen so soon after her meeting with their father. Yancey Perdia was the heir to the dukedom, while Carlot Perdia was the second son. Yancey had already heard the news that she had sent a formal request to the first prince to end their engagement, and Elodie confirmed it was true. Carlot spoke up, certain that there was more to the story than just the annulment, while Yancey looked at her with an expression of concern, asking if their father had scolded her or punished her severely. Elodie replied simply that she had only been told to reflect on her conduct. She knew better than to trust her brother's concern. As a direct descendant of the family, Yancey possessed the terrible power of annihilation, and what made him truly dangerous was his personality. He was calculating, cold, and capable of crushing anyone who stood in his way in an instant. His handsome and gentle appearance was nothing more than a perfect disguise. He pretended to be worried and caring, but Elodie refused to be fooled by his feigned distress. Carlotte then made a cruel comment, saying that she likely had problems in her mind, implying that she belonged locked away in her wing of the estate forever. Yancey quickly interrupted his younger brother, telling him not to speak that way. He reminded them that they were family and should live together in harmony, adding with a twisted smile that they were his favorite siblings. He lied so shamelessly, the mocking glint in his eyes obvious to Elodie, sending shivers through her body. Seeing that the conversation was going nowhere good, Elodie announced that she was returning to her quarters. As soon as she walked away, Carlotte mentioned that her usual dinner was being prepared, but he noted how strange and different her behavior had been that day. Yancey agreed, saying that her actions deviated so much from her usual self that it was almost unrecognizable. Elodie knew a secret that no one else in the house suspected. Her brother's extraordinary powers had manifested since childhood, but she was different, not because she was weak, but because she was not truly a Perdia. Even though everyone called her the Duke's illegitimate daughter, she actually did not have a single drop of Sylvester Perdia's blood running through her veins. If this truth were ever discovered, they would kill her instantly. She had to escape before anyone realized she was an imposter. However, she had discovered something else that gave her a small measure of comfort. Without the memories of her past life, she would have remained ignorant of her true identity forever. She learned that she actually possessed a unique power inherited from her real biological parents, the ability of purification, a power belonging to the noble Sais family. If she were to use this ability openly, it would immediately reveal that she did not belong to House Perdia, and she would be cast out for having no blood relation to them. That was exactly what she wanted, but there was a catch. Her real father, the head of the Sais family, was currently in a deep coma and unable to protect her. Therefore, she could not reveal her powers under any circumstances yet, or she would be left vulnerable and alone. She needed to get far away from the Perdia family before they realized her true nature or tried to use her abilities against her. With this in mind, Elodie made her way toward the private gardens of Demis Perdia, the Duchess and wife of Duke Sylvester Perdia. It was a place of beauty, yet filled with hidden dangers, and it was exactly where her new plan would begin. Demis Perdia, known as the main tyrant of the continent, and the Duchess herself, spotted Elodie approaching and asked why she had come without prior announcement. Elodie curtsied respectfully to greet the Duchess, and asked for permission to speak privately within the garden. Surprise was evident on Demis's face, as it was an unusual choice of location, but Elodie explained that the matter concerned the Duchess's work and inventions, something she believed would interest her greatly. Intrigued, Demis turned and signaled for Elodie to follow her, but she issued a strict warning. The garden held many dangerous things, and Elodie must not touch anything under any circumstances. Elodie assured her she understood the risks perfectly. Once they were alone, Elodie revealed that the imperial family had issued an order to seize one of the Duchess's most valuable creations. She explained that it was an unnecessary loss for everyone, as the Duchess had invented a highly effective pesticide that could help countless farmers. However, the Emperor intended to take it for himself. Demis clarified the situation further, explaining that her invention was incredibly toxic. If it entered the human body, it would cause severe damage or death. She looked at Elodie with skepticism, wondering why a young lady would offer to help her with such a complex matter. Without hesitation, Elodie took out a small glass bottle filled with clear liquid and showed it to the Duchess. She explained that it was an antidote she had developed, one that could neutralize the poison and solve the problem entirely.